Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Golf Rules Questions podcast. My name's Rossco, your co-host, and sitting virtually opposite me, I can see him still behind his same background. We'll come to that back in a second. But Blakey, how are you? Blakey, you well?
Yeah, going well, Roscoe. I think this is week 6 or so of lockdown, so we've still got another 3 or 4 weeks to go. Missing the golf, but yeah, certainly watching a lot on TV as we've seen. How about you? How are you going?
Mate, yeah, absolutely. Keeping busy as we can in this lockdown period. You know, my world hasn't really stopped. Things are still happening. Phone's still ringing. Still talking to people, which is great. Yeah, missing the golf. Had a little episode with my net in my backyard, which was keeping me in some golf swing. If you see my Instagram at ross.flanagan.golf, you can see my net that I've been editing some little practice videos up. The net is no more. I'm trying to resurrect the net, but that was a bit of sadness for me during the week. Blakey, my net blew over, mate. My net blew over.
Was the weather that strong in Melbourne?
Well, down here by the water, mate, and we did get a few southerly gusts anyway. It is what it is, but I'll sort it out. Mate, it's been a busy week in our world of golf rules questions. You know, we've had a couple of events happening which just continued to give. They were the events that gave a lot of information and a lot of content for us to talk about today, and talk about that in a rules sense. How did you see, as a summary of the week, pan out? What happened as a high level overview, mate?
Yeah. So we've got a few rules situations. I thought after the PGA Championship we probably wouldn't have as many, but then we had the US Amateur happening on the weekend, which was fantastic to watch. We actually got to watch it here in Australia on Fox Sports, and I love watching match play. I'm not sure about you, but I absolutely love it. And they played at Bandon Dunes. I haven't been to Bandon Dunes, but that links style golf, I absolutely enjoy watching people playing it. And yeah, as I said, match play is just a different beast. So we're going to cover off a few incidences that happened in that tournament. And it's really interesting because the PGA Tour, which we also saw an incident there, one of my favourite incidents with the ball overhanging the hole. So we'll talk about that. But the PGA Tour, they have referees. They have paid referees. They're not with every group. They get called in when a situation occurs. But the US Amateur, whilst the matches will have a walking referee with them, the players aren't used to having referees there and on the spot and allocated. So it's just the difference between the amateur and the professional game is, and we are going to talk about this a little bit more in the next episode, but just the difference between the players having referees that they know are there and not being used to referees is a big difference. If you're in playing tennis, you always have an umpire, or you can, when you're growing up, not have an umpire. Probably a bad example, Roscoe, but in soccer or footy or rugby, you always have a referee. Cricket, you have umpires, although they could be from the other side, and they never give LBWs. But yeah, those sports like netball and rugby, AFL, they always have a referee, whereas golf, you're usually the referee, and seeing these players then have to deal with the referee and how it works is very interesting.
We'll come back and talk about that because we do have one on the run sheet today, and we touched on it a little bit in the previous episode, the difference between tour competition setup and club competition setup for rules. And you're sort of leading into it there with that. And I saw something on the women's golf last night, that the Women's Open, which will come into that discussion as well. Let's get straight into talking about the young man. What was his name? Young Pinto up there at the USAM he got down to a pretty, what was in the last 32 thereabouts?
Yeah, this was actually in the top, I thought it was the top 8 or top 16 match, and he actually ended up playing against the guy that eventually won the thing and lost on the lost on the 18th, not due to lack of skill.
So the situation was such, and you've probably already seen it if you've been, any eyes on the golf world. He was in the greenside bunker, pretty much had to make up and down to win the hole. What did he have to do? He had to He was one down. Was he one down on the 18th?
No, he was square on the 18th.
Yeah,
and I think he had to get up and down, and the other guy was on the green for 2 or 3. I can't remember if it's a par 5, and the guy just basically had to get up and down to halve the hole and go to extra holes. And and something happened that wasn't was in his control, but wasn't something that he wasn't one of his actions.
Well, let's cue that up and have a listen and just show everyone what we've been talking about.
As soon as I get back there, the referee comes up and asks my caddy what happened, and I'm completely shocked because I'm just trying to get this shot near and try to make an up and down and win the match. And apparently he touched the sand or something, and
that isn't on the player, but it's his caddy, who, as you heard Craig Winter describe, is just like the player treated in this instance, because he can relay any information to his player, and that was just unquestionable.
Well, that's...
So, yeah, you saw that vision probably on YouTube or whatever level of social media you get, because it was hard to miss. But, just for the people listening, you see the overhead shot of the from the sky cam. The caddy walks in, just casually saunters up to the sand, just reaches down and just gives it a little bit of a brush and a little bit of a prod, and then just walks out as if nothing's happened. And his mind in that moment, he obviously had a massive brain fade, and there probably wasn't anything wrong in his mind at the moment, but certainly it became very apparent very quickly that he had made a critical error on behalf of his player. So how do you see that, Blakey?
Yeah, exactly right. He's not sure whether he actually realised what the rule was, but the rule itself is about testing the bunker. It's 12.2b, and that you're not permitted to test the bunker with your hand or a club or something else. So he's gone in there and tested it just to obviously see how hard it was. He wasn't washing his hands. And because he's the caddy, 10.3, Rule 10.3 tells us that the caddy or the player is responsible for any actions of the caddy. And in this case, because the caddy breached a rule, the player incurs the penalty, which is 2 strokes in stroke play, but it's loss of hole in match play. If this had happened on the first hole, okay, he's 1 down, he moves to the second. But it happened on the 18th. That is just really tough for the young player. I'm sure the caddy's feeling really bad about it. That the player came out during the week and said, look, I got disqualified. It wasn't my fault. It was my caddy, but I've already forgiven him. So if you are looking at this going, what a terrible caddy, you just sitting at home on the couch, you should be able to forgive him as well. So I thought that was a really nice thing, but it still doesn't avoid the fact that he was disqualified for something that he didn't do.
Yeah, it was a monumental on behalf of the caddy, and he was a Bandon Dunes caddy, and just on the social media side, there's been a lot of support for him as well as the player, but a lot of support from the senior caddies of Bandon Dunes who wrote to him and got in contact with a couple of other big names on social media, and that's been pretty well publicized. So just a really unfortunate situation, which had quite catastrophic circumstances in probably the biggest moment of a young man's amateur golf career to date.
Yeah, I reckon that player will definitely make it in the professional game, and it'll be a laughing matter in 5 years, 10 years, and the caddy will definitely learn from it. And it's really important that the caddies know the rules as well, not just the players. So whether they find out information through this podcast or my social media on Golf Rules questions, the quizzes, whatever, or elsewhere. There's plenty of resources out there to learn the rules of golf, and anyone can do it, whether you're a player or a caddy or even a spectator.
Have you, in your times officiating in matches, come across in a pennant situation various degrees of difficulty between player and caddy and clubs and teams created by caddy scenarios? Because I know in the district pennant in Melbourne, for example, most of the big clubs have, their players have caddies, and they're just usually members from the club, and they might be senior members of the club or they're volunteers. They're not proper caddies. They're just out helping their team trying to get a win. Have you had to officiate on any situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting thing, and this is what I sort of was talking about before, is that suddenly in these situations, these players suddenly are playing this pennant competition, and suddenly there's a referee around, and they don't realise what power or what assistance the referee can provide, because that's all the referee's there to do, is just provide information on the rules on how you're supposed to continue play with the situation that you've gotten yourself into. So, if you go and play on a Saturday, there's no referee. If you have an incident, you might call up usually the professional golf shop, which is really important that the professionals know the rules that are working in those club golf situations. But the caddy might call up the professional, and get it sorted. Whereas when they come and play in these competitions, we most of the time send out referees. They'll be roving referees. Now, a roving referee in a match play can't get themselves involved except for about 3 or 4 specific rules, like being late to the tee, code of conduct breach, etc., etc. But everything else, they actually can't. They have to sit back and look and watch until one of the players actually approaches them and says, I want to make a claim. Now, a lot of people don't know that. Whereas an allocated referee, that's usually what we call a allocated or walking referee. They are basically in control of the match, like you would see an umpire in an AFL match, or an umpire in a cricket match, or a referee in a rugby match. They have to act on anything, and we saw this in a President's Cup a few years ago. I think I've got the video on my YouTube about Jordan Spieth, and he's one of his opposition. It was like Louis Oosthuizen maybe, and the ball was in motion, no chance of it being holed. Jordan stopped it just because it was going to roll in the water, and he didn't want the fans, American fans, to cry and cheer about Louis' ball going in the water. So he stopped it. It had no effect on the actual match, and then the allocated referee acted on that and penalised Jordan, who ended up losing the hole because of that, and they ended up losing the hole, which just didn't appear fair. And then Jason Day, and because it was a 4-ball, and Louis were like, oh, well, that's, surely we don't want them to lose that match, or we don't want them to make a claim. And the allocated ref he can't do anything apart from he saw it. It has to be ruled on. So that's really important. They've actually since changed that rule about an opponent stopping a player's ball in motion when it has no chance of getting holed. Basically, that you stop it and then you've given the person the putt there, or given the person their next stroke. But getting back to pennant and seeing these kind of situations, what I do see is people not realizing that you have to, if they see a breach of the rule, they have to make a claim, unless it's that allocated referee. And then if it's allocated, it is the referee's job to pick up things and make an assessment or a ruling on those situations.
Sorry.
Have I seen this personally up close? Not often. I really haven't refereed too many matches, which is a shame because I really enjoy it. But yeah, I don't see it too often. And I'm always in a mindset, if I'm allocated, to try and prevent rulings. So get over to a penalty area and just ask the player if they want assistance, etc.
Can I tell you a story about my experience in that environment?
I really hope you do.
Okay, it's not catastrophic, but so playing a final of a pennant match, and the backstory was, now you can't ask to be drawn against a certain player, but within the teams, and these guys, pretty much where someone's going to play from the opposition team. In a previous round, one of the opposition players had effectively bullied one of our junior players that was playing in our team, and left the young fella quite scarred, because he didn't treat him in the spirit of the game, and I didn't really take too well to that. And you can't flex any muscle in the game of golf, and I wasn't trying to, but I was really hoping that I got drawn against that person, because I thought, he's not going to be able to bully me. And anyway, turns out he could. He just did it in another way. And what happens? We got several holes into the match, and he was playing incredibly, incredibly slow. Now, this is several years ago, a long time ago, but he was playing slow on purpose. It became very apparent. I had a caddy, and I said to the caddy, I said, look, just send the note out to, let's get the referee over here and let's do something about this, because this is just ridiculous. And it got slower and slower. Lo and behold, the referee comes across. He's actually obviously an official, but he's a member of our club, which was a little bit strange in itself, but he was officiating all of the pennant matches that day. He was a member of our club. I didn't really know him that well. And I thought, great, this is good. I'm back on top here. Well, he puts us both on the clock. He says, right, you guys, you're on the clock, slow play, it's on it, blah, blah, blah. And then that put me under pressure. Now I felt, I'm the one that's doing bad here now. And it rattled me a little bit, and it sort of backfired. And, old mate who I was playing against, I could see him in the corner of his eye with his caddy just laughing and sniggering and just going, yeah, got him. We've got him. So that was one such scenario where I had to get a rules official involved. As you say, they were roving, and I had to engage them, and I did that. And I lost 2-1.
Well,
anyway.
I've got a couple of stories. I mean, the whole pace of play, we'll definitely cover that in in another episode. Basically, don't delay play and all that kind of stuff, and what can happen when a referee comes across. And I've got some experiences about that on the tour that I'm sure a lot of people would like to hear. We'll make sure not to name names. But I've got a story. We were playing in a pennant final, and through 9 holes, we were stuffed. I think we were 1 up, and maybe I was half. I was having a half, so we might have been 5.5 or 1.5 to 5.5, and we looked dead. Then one of my best mate, he won the 9th to get to I think 3 down, and then on the 10th hole, the opponent grounded his club in the backswing, and he didn't see it, but his caddy saw it, who was a very good golfer as well. And he said to my mate, look, your opponent just grounded his club in the backswing. And so they were like, oh, well, okay. So they got a referee in there. Referee said, well, did you? And the opponent sort of said, oh, I don't know. And the opponent's caddy sort of said, oh, yeah, he might have. He might have been tied up against the back lip or something like that. Anyway, he gave him the hole. The referee said, well, if you did, that's loss a hole, and my mate's now 2 down. He goes on and he wins the next 4 of the next 6 or something like that, and ends up winning their match on the 17th. Just before he finished, I finished, and then we had another one win, and then and another one came from behind as well. And we ended up winning 5-2 or something like that. So, you know, they can really turn matches. That guy was 4 up at one stage, and my friend fought back. And, yeah, as I said, won like 5 out of the next 7, with that included, with that one on the 9th. So, yeah, it's a really interesting game, you know. And we saw it in the USAM, because how many matches, you know, the guy that ended up winning, in his semi-final, he was 4 up with 5 to play, lost 4 in a row or something, and they were square going to 18. And then the other dude, who was on a roll coming back, left 2 in the bunker, on the fairway bunker. So he ended up losing, and then that was the semi-final, and that player ended up going on to win. So love match play.
Well, in all of those examples, many examples of the value of a tough and resilient mental performance in the game of golf. And of course, if you want to tune into mental performance strategies, jump over and see the Mental Mastery of Golf podcast, which you'll hear me and Jamie Glazier on. Always great podcast to get some mental tips on. Hey, as we move on, and we'll keep going, opponent standing on an extension of the line behind the ball. This is a good one for me, because it's something that me playing with a lot of, you know, non-club level golfers, you know, when they're trying to play serious, you know, I'm talking about maybe some of the footy guys or the soccer club guys, you know, they can stand on the extension of the line, look at their mate's putt, and there's always that bit of ambiguity about what is approved or appropriate or legal or not. So you've got a little bit of video here from your YouTube channel, and jump across and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a really great resource for any of the topics that we have or haven't talked about. Let's cue that up.
At the 8th, where Gupta has a chance here to cut into this Strafacci train.
And Dan, he's going to take up a position right behind Tyler as Tyler lines this one up, because Strafacci's ball, as it rolls down towards the hole, is going to go right past Gupta's coin, and Gupta is all over him. In fact,
Did you see him?
Tyler just asked him to move
Him off a little bit.
You gotta love it. Can you give me a step over there, please?
Yeah.
All right, so we just saw the opponent standing directly behind the line of the player, and it didn't look like he wanted to move or was going to move. And then the player who was hitting the putt then just said, "Come on, mate, on you go, on your bike, move over there." So what was happening there, Blakey?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic one. So as you set it up, the player, let's call Strafacci the player. So he's got about a 20-footer. Gupta has got about a 10-footer. Let's set it up like that. And so they're right on the same line. Gupta wants to stand on that extension of the line behind the ball, or behind his ball, which is also behind where Strafacci's hitting from, to see exactly how this ball is going to react on the green. Now, there's no penalty for doing this. The issue is if the player, Strafacci, thinks that he's being distracted, and in Rule 1.2, it talks about showing consideration to other players, which is what Gupta would have to do if Strafacci was motioning, as we saw, motioning for him to move out of the way. You know, hey, you're distracting me a little bit. Can you move away? Now, there's no penalty if Strafacci had left Gupta there. The issue would be if it happened and Strafacci wasn't happy with it, or he asked him to move and Gupta didn't, then he could get an official in, and the official was sort of going to give a warning, hey mate, just move out of the way. You know, it show consideration to others. And if he didn't, or he did it again, or he continually sort of did it a few more times, you know, the committee could, it's not an automatic penalty, but they could disqualify the player for that breach of code of conduct, or if there was a code of conduct penalty that the committee had put in prior, say in match play was loss a hole, in stroke play you might be like a 1 shot or a 2 shot, but in match play it most likely be loss a hole. Then the committee could and that referee could give the player that, or the opponent, up the penalty in that case. I doubt there would have been a code of conduct, because you got to write that into your code of conduct, and I doubt that there would have been such a code of conduct around that situation, because it's just not heard of that often. Most people, when you play golf, you're showing consideration to the others. Yeah, you're and he did. He quickly, after the putt was hit, he quickly ran back behind him and tried to see as much as he could of where that putt was going to go. But he did it in a pretty good spirit after he'd been moved on by the player. So it was a really interesting one to watch. But just good to see it on TV, basically.
So just for the sake of final clarity, you can stand behind the line of your playing partner's putt, playing partner or opponent's putt. You can do that.
Your opponent in match play, yes. Your another player in stroke play, yes. If it was your playing partner, or the rules say partner is a 4-ball
yes,
player, you couldn't do that under that 10.2b4, which we saw a couple of breaches last year. But if it's someone who's not associated with your game, you're not playing a 4-ball, it's an individual stroke play or individual match play, yeah, you can actually stand there. And if they ask you to move,
you've got to move.
You've got to move. Basically, that's the game that we play. The spirit of the game is don't show consideration, don't distract people.
Caddie can't stand behind you on that line, through line or behind line.
They can actually stand on your through line.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can stand on your through line, except if they're standing there to show you where to hit the ball, that's a breach.
Right.
Okay, so if they go, aim at my left foot, basically they have to move that left foot. But you can actually stand on the through line just to watch someone play. But I guess it wouldn't happen that often, because that is, or would be considered, quite distracting.
And it sort of links in sort of loosely, but that rule changed in the pro game, especially where with the caddy's ability to line players up. Just quickly cap on what changed there. Yeah,
so this is a funny one, because this sort of was brought about by the LPGA not wanting players to be lined up by their caddies, and then when the rule was coming in, the ladies or the women on the LPGA got the message pretty quickly, easily, and then we found that the men inadvertently sort of stood there, and the caddies sort of stood there in that specific spot, and there was a couple of breaches that we saw the players get, but that a clarification came out that you can reset yourself, but also a lot of people learnt that what the rule is. I mean, that's the funny thing. We talked about this last week. A lot of times you learn what the rules are just by breaking them. So that's always a funny one.
Mate, this is another classic that we're going to flick up to with one of your favourite golfers, I'm led to believe, Rafa Cabrera-Bello. And the old overhanging the lip putt. It's probably the most videoed type of golf content that you see on online. Balls hanging around the lip of a hole. Let's just cue Rafa Cabrera-Bello up and let's have a listen to what happens here.
Birdie putt now for Rafa Cabrera-Bello. That's painful.
Yeah. I used to hate that when he sits on the back of the hole looking at you. Hang on a minute. I could have sworn I saw a dimple move. Go on.
It's teetering.
Oh, no, how rotten is that? Oh, which way's the earth spinning?
Yes!
Oh, how about that? Wow.
I thought it was Harris teetering there on the edge.
Yeah.
Before he signed his card, he met with
So I didn't get I should have put the clock on that, but it was probably 40 or so seconds there in that little grab. So he hits a putt, ball rolls up to the edge of the hole. You obviously hear the genius of Nick Faldo just asking the earth to move and make something happen for poor Rafa Cabrera-Bello, and I'm glad I got the pronunciation right. I was happy with that. So what happened there, mate? What did you see?
Yeah, so firstly, well done on getting the pronunciation well.
Gracias.
Yeah, done.
He's moving.
Because I'm just not even going to attempt to say his name, so I'll just say RCB. But, it's a really interesting one, and it's very interesting on the PGA Tour because they seem to be quite lenient on the reasonable time that it takes to get to the hole. So what the rule is that once the ball is overhanging the lip or overhanging the hole, it's right on the edge of the lip, it's overhanging the hole, you have the reasonable time it takes to get to the ball, and then 10 seconds starts from there. And we've seen a few of these over the years, including John Senden, who seemed to walk around the hole to use his reasonable time. And there was another one, I think it was Scott Langley. And, whether it's moving or not, the timer still keeps counting. So, if it is 5 seconds, you get to the hole and you've counted 5 and then you see it sort of move, you don't restart. It's just you keep counting. And then if it drops in at 11 seconds, it's hold, but you include a penalty stroke. Now, RCB has taken about 16 seconds to walk 20 foot and then determined that, then the clock basically for the PGA started and it moved and it dropped in. I think it dropped in about 8 seconds from when he got to the hole. Did he cause it to move? I mean, we see his shadow go over the ball. It's not virtually certain that he caused it to move because he wasn't that close to the ball. So, you have to have at least 95% virtual certainty for that. Maybe, if you're being really harsh, you could say 70%, 80% that he caused it to move, but you're still not 95, so there's no penalty there. But for me, it was just the case that they are so lax on reasonable amount of time it takes to get to the hole. Now, we don't see what he does, but he explained it in his after round interview that, he was sort of made the whole, the whole, oh my God, is it going to fall in, or, gesture and, I don't know, put his hands in his head, and then he said the playing partners were sort of moving around. I still don't think that's reasonable, but each committee has that flexibility within the rules to deem whether it's a penalty or not.
So if you're a club golfer, the reality of the situation is you hit the putt, the ball goes and is hanging on the edge of the hole. You need to walk to your ball. You need to count 10. If it's not in by 10, you tap it in.
Basically.
You can't do, and this is the leniency part that you see on the PGA Tour, which, bemuses me, like imagine a putt that's, to win a championship, right? Or to win something significant. And you think it's tracking the hole and you take off and you're running around, you're doing your lap of honor, and your lap of honor takes, 20 seconds, your ball's hanging on the edge of the hole. That's unreasonable, but it seems to be, and I might be putting a bit of sauce on that, but it seems to be on the PGA Tour that they allow the whole hands in the air, the huffing and puffing and the heaving and moaning and the, oh my goodness gracious me, standing on the spot where they hit the putt. And then they usually count the 10 from when they get to the hole. And it's different in clubland, but I think the intention of what you've just described, if you're a club golfer, you hit the putt, you walk up, maybe a little, huff and a puff, walk up, count to 10, get it in, not in, get in the hole.
I would think for, and I'd be lenient in saying this, but I'd say for a club golfer, if you've got a 20-foot putt, you've got about 18 seconds in which the ball can drop once it's overhanging the hole. You've got about 8 seconds for you to walk that 20 foot, and that's that's lenient because that's including your, huffing and puffing. Oh my God, I can't believe it. And then getting to the hole and waiting your 10 seconds. Now, I will admit that, it creates drama if they let it happen, and if they were to tell the public that I incurs a penalty stroke, they might almost be lynched. But, we can't be just standing around waiting and watching all day. And if it's not going to fall in within that time, it shouldn't be counted. That reasonable time plus the 10 seconds. Now, this actually did happen on the Oz PGA Tour 2018 at the Lakes for Jake McLeod. And, he didn't take unreasonable time to get to the hole. He took about 4-5 seconds to get to the hole for about a 20-footer as well. And then his ball fell in. In 22 seconds or 18 to 22 seconds or something. And he was afterwards pinged that penalty shot, and obviously the ball was holed. Now, if he'd been on the PGA Tour, he could have waited another 15 seconds where he hit the putt from, and he would have been fine. It would have counted as hold. So, it should be, it's very hard to make it the same all world round, and especially if you don't have cameras on it and whatnot. But it shouldn't be about this. You can wait sort of near where you've hit your shot, as long as you want, and then start walking your hole to get that extra few 5-10 seconds.
Well, it sort of leads into that a little bit of that topic, and just to cut in with a bit of admin, because I see we're getting to that 36-minute mark, and we are trying to keep these to short and concise and based on your feedback. But the difference between the tour rules and club competition rules, and that's a good example of, something that happens in fantasy land. I'll call the tour fantasy land for us club golfers, and what should, the way that the rules intended to be applied, and how you should and how you need to apply yourself in your own behavior on the golf course, which is probably a topic that we'll talk about in the next episode. That whole managing yourself and the, being responsible, in terms of your own administration. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's wrap this one up and go straight into recording that one for episode 4. Because as you pointed out, I have had feedback that around that 30-minute mark would be perfect for our listeners, and we've got to listen to the listeners, to their feedback, and give them what they want. So just before we go, you were going to let everyone know where your background was from last week, from episode 2, which we had a little bit of issue with the recording, but we did do a little intro video for that. So do you want to tell everyone where that was?
Let's make a call on the issue with the recording, and it lies fairly and squarely with a 2-shot penalty to me for not hitting the recording button for the video. So apologies for those that didn't get the video, and only the little clip video that we made subsequent. But the background, if you did see it, and if you watch the My Love of Golf podcast, you might see it there as well. The background was on the way to the toilets in the clubhouse at Turnberry in Scotland. So now known as Trump Turnberry, which, he's done some great things for the course, but, as everything with that man, it comes with mixed opinions. But the clubhouse there is fantastic. The course is fantastic. Haven't played it, but I did go to the toilet, and I did take a lovely photo of those memorabilia portraits. So if you guessed that correctly, if you'd seen that, well done. Now, we've got backgrounds here. Blakey hasn't changed his background, so no one's guessed his hiking destination. It's exotic. Let's just... is it Southern Hemisphere or Northern Hemisphere, Blakey?
This one's Southern Hemisphere.
Okay. Is it Asia Pacific, or is it, sort of America, South America?
It's South America.
Okay, there you go. There you go. If anyone has got this far and wants to follow them with this competition that we've really thought up of on the fly, you can send Blakey your notes there. But my one is quite significant for golf at the moment, and you can see that here. It's probably one of the most significant in tournament golf. Have a guess where that is. Let us know. It's a pretty easy one. Blakey, once again, we could talk about rules Golf Rules for hours and hours on end. We'll wrap this up here at 39 or 40 odd minutes, and we'll come back with episode 4, where we're going to touch on. What are we going to touch on? What's everyone looking forward to in episode 4 when they come back?
Yeah, well, we've got a listener's question, which we're going to get into. There might be a couple more rulings that we're going to cross over, and also just a little bit more about what we just talked about that sort of being your own referee and playing in the spirit of the game, and what do you do when you see a breach by someone else, and how you sort of confront them about it in the nicest possible manner.
Blakey, once again, thanks for joining me on the Golf Rules Questions podcast. It's been great. Look forward to seeing you all in episode 4. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, thanks for joining the Golf Rules Questions podcast.
See you guys.
Thank you.